Hey guys, welcome back to the Pair Connection podcast. You're here with Schuler, Nate, Ryan, and Kaylee.
Hello. Hi.
Yep.
Can you tell how enthusiastic they are? It's been a while since we've done a podcast together.
Yeah, it has.
All right, Nate.
We've been having adventures this summer.
Yes.
Individually.
Anyways, yes, we've had some vacations throughout the summertime, and we're trying to get our investigation schedule all put together before the fall and winter times come in. And we're getting a couple of podcasts started up because we have a new member to the team. His name is Andy Gifford, and we're going to bring him on tonight as our first guest of this new podcast season that we have going on here. It's our first one since a while. So tonight's topic is going to be about immortality, which is very, very broad, but it's going to be a new take for us. I'm pretty intrigued by it. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Pretty excited.
Kaylee?
No, I am not doing it.
Pretty
How-
damn excited.
Are you pretty dang excited, Kaylee?
There are no words.
That's okay. For all of our legend fan listeners out there, they remember her motto, pretty dang excited. So we'll get that on a t-shirt one of these days. But yeah, so we've had a lot going on, but we're getting our groove back into it with a couple podcasts coming up here. And we're going to get our investigations going on and try to do a couple of events, see if we can collaborate with some teams and network. And of course, you know where to find those updates at.
Where's that at?
Instagram and Facebook, Ryan. Like
Awesome.
always.
That's
Yeah.
great. Thanks, guys.
Ryan, do you have anything that you'd like to say before we get this podcast rolling?
No, I'm really excited.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Nate?
On with the show.
Okay. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and start this podcast up and get Andy on the line and talk about immortality. All right, guys, we got the podcast rolling here with our guest of the evening, and actually, he's officially on the team now after a couple discussions and some good conversation. We have Andy Gifford here with us. Andy, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Happy to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for coming on to talk with us tonight. This is your first time being on our podcast, correct?
Correct.
But you met me for the first time on the other podcast with my good buddy Jeff, and that was kind of more just like a, collaboration podcast, but we still talked about the paranormal.
Right.
So Andy,
Glad to be part of it.
before we get you set up with the rest of the team here, go ahead and tell some of our listeners out there a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I live in Michigan. I'm a paranormal investigator. I've been studying the paranormal for about 30 years, basically since I was 9. I have a very extensive library of paranormal books. I basically started my career on studying books. And then later on in life, about 2003-ish, I started buying the equipment and actually going out and doing investigations. That's pretty much how I got started.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like you have a pretty good background, Andy. I mean, we're going to introduce you real quick. So I know you got to talk a little bit with Nate and Ryan, but Kaylee is kind of the newest member that you haven't got to talk to.
Hey.
How's it going?
Well,
Hey.
team.
So, Andy, even though you're in Michigan and the rest of us are here in Indiana, we're still going to collaborate with you and work with you, of course. And our listeners, they're probably wondering, how are you going to work with us? Well, we want to bring you on to help us and kind of have a little background information on the topics that we do with the podcast. And along with that, possibly do a little research on some of the locations that we go to. Because even though you can't be there with us in person, if you feel the umph enough to look into where we're going, I mean, we would feel great with that too. So at the same time, you'll know where we're going and what we're doing and, get involved with the equipment we use and the places we go to.
Right, and if I remember correctly, we also kind of talked a little bit about me joining in via like camera call or live stream.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to all of it. Really, I do enjoy the research, and so yeah, I mean it's going to be a lot of fun.
As we try to expand ourselves further out, possibly one day we can make our way up to Michigan, and do a location up there and get you involved and actually have you there in person with us.
Oh, absolutely. And, eventually I'm going to get to a point to where I should be able to travel as well. If you guys want to maybe come by and pick me up for an investigation sometime, we can do that. But as for right now, I can't quite leave my house just yet. For your listeners' sake, I am in a wheelchair. And so it's hard for me to get in and out of the house right now because I don't have accessibility. I don't have like a ramp in front of my house or anything like that, but we are working on it. We're working on putting a lift on the house actually, so I can get in and out that way. But as for right now, I just have no way to get in and out without help.
Well, that's all right, Andy. You know, one day at a time, and as that comes in too, you know, that'd be great. By the time that we get up there, we'll be able to work with you on that, take on investigation. I'm sure you have a couple of local areas that you could pinpoint that we could go to and see what.
Oh, are you kidding? With my knowledge of the research, dude, I could set you up with any place in the United States.
That's amazing.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, I've got books that talk about every location in the United States. So, you know, whatever you guys need, I can easily find it.
Right on. Yeah, because we're going to want to try to bring on some more guests. And if any of you out there hear the shuffling, we have some papers for tonight's topic. We're going to try to dive into some good details, but that's all right. So don't mind the shuffling.
Speaking of guests, that's another job I'll be doing for you guys. I will be going out there and hooking you up with guests as well. I've already got quite a few lined up. I have no shortage of people, so
that we most definitely will do, Andy. The more guests, the merrier. So we can have, you know, not only new topics to speak about, but different aspects and beliefs and strategies and whatever else is out there. So
absolutely.
So Andy, if you're ready, I think the rest of the team here is. Let's go ahead and jump into tonight's discussion, which is about immortality.
Oh boy.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm as ready as I can be.
Yeah, Andy, I think I recall a little bit earlier today that immortality isn't your biggest boast of energy here of a topic, but that's okay because we have a specialist on tonight, and his name is Nathaniel Weber, and he is going to help us dive into this topic with shooting stars. So
hear that? You're a specialist.
Yeah, that's okay.
No, I happen to be familiar with Nathaniel Weber.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah.
You've heard of his work?
I've heard of his work, yes.
Take it away.
I'm a fan.
Okay, so unofficially, Nate is our specialist tonight. But, you know, we're going to wing this the best we can with the facts that we have and that we know. But this is strictly just our own opinions. We're here to have fun and just highlight a topic. And tonight's topic is immortality. So, Nate, take it away, please.
Okay, so one of the topics, the subtopics based on immortality that I know you and I had chatted about was the religious aspect of it. And, you know, there are a couple different views, religious-wise, that, you know, we can kind of discuss. But what was one of the religious aspects that kind of stuck out to you that you thought was the most interesting?
Well, I've noticed that the majority of it is not so much about the immortal body, it's more about the immortal soul.
Yeah.
So it's more things such as like resurrection,
Yes.
or reincarnation, that sort of thing.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, other than that, it really did not go into it all that much. Plus, you know, there were some that believed that sacrifices would bring them immortality, such as the Aztecs, for one.
Yes.
But there were several different religions that went into it. There was Judaism, there was Hinduism, Islam, even Christianity believes in, you know, some form of immortality of the soul. And so, you know, I did find that interesting as well, to find that, Christianity was part of that. But then I remembered, well, there was the resurrection of Jesus. So, that explained it. But yeah, I mean,
How about you, Kaylee?
So like the whole thing with Jesus's resurrection, do you kind of feel like that is a keen example of immortality, or
I would say so, yeah. You're being brought back to life. I mean, yeah, that's absolutely.
do you believe that you have to die to get immortality, or can you stay alive and not die to gain eternal life in the physical body?
Oh boy, that's a hard question.
Because I mean, jumping into it, we're thinking about vampires is my first thought. They have to technically die to gain that immortality, to come back to life. You can't just stay alive and keep living that way. You have to die and then come back to life, which is the only way that I know to gain immortality from all the folklore and all that fun stuff.
Right, and that's a very interesting way of looking at it, to be honest with you. And plus, also in different cultures, they believe that there are different ways to kill a vampire. Like, most people believe that a stake to the heart will do it, while other cultures believe that you have to cut off the head.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, and there are others. I think there was another way as well. I think it was similar to, I think it was a silver bullet.
Yeah, I think that works along with werewolves too.
Yes. Yeah, so
Ryan's being funny and he's talking about garlic, but I don't think that really works.
garlic, I don't know if that's truly a way to kill a vampire. It may damage their skin a bit, but I don't know if it would actually kill them.
I'd feel terrible for them if that's true, because that means they wouldn't be able to enjoy like Pizza Hut or Papa John's or anything.
Oh my God.
Right, exactly. I mean, how are you going to enjoy a nice slice of Domino's if you're allergic to garlic?
So if you're running from a vampire, just go to your local pizza place.
So
And you'll
basically,
be fine.
there is no Italian vampires.
Yeah.
Right.
You're safe in Italy.
That is true.
Yeah. Good points. But yeah, thinking about like how they would die though, like even if they're mortal, there are still quote unquote strategies or techniques that could kill a immortal entity like a vampire, I guess. But
Right.
obviously there's not much to prove it. These are just more written down scriptures. But going back to the resurrection of Jesus, he's technically supposed to be an immortal and alive. The body was missing.
Right.
Other than that, no one saw where it went. He wasn't walking around like a vampire. It was just everything was gone. A giant stone was moved that no one man could do. But I mean, there's a lot of loopholes that we could jump into. But going back to it, the key point is immortality, of how one would gain that and never die in the physical flesh.
Right.
So, but yeah, I didn't realize that so many religions followed into immortality. I strictly thought it was more of just like folklore from like Romania or, the old
Egypt.
Old tales of mummies and stuff.
Every-
But
I'm sure
Right.
probably has it.
What I think is interesting is like what all these different things that people are trying to do to like extend their life or whatever, or if you have how you hear like of is it like cryonics where it's they make you really cold and you basically freezes you. It's like what happens to your soul during that point. Like if you're someone who believes in the soul, like it's just interesting like hearing people's stories about like when people like when they have their near death experiences, or like they've like technically been dead for a few minutes and they come back and they recount all this stuff that they witnessed while they were supposedly dead. It's like what's going on. And so like it's like if you do happen to resurrect yourself, what's that doing to the soul? What's that have to do with your body? Like, do you need your body to have your soul in it? Or kind of like the movie Chappie, where like you could download your consciousness and that's kind of like your soul into a different thing. So many different avenues to go down.
Exactly. That's a very good
How about that, Andy?
Well, to be honest, I've never actually thought of it that way.
Okay.
That's a very good point. One of the things, one of the things during my research that I did find interesting is I was looking at immortal species of animal, and a lot of them were like sea creatures, such as the jellyfish and the red sea urchin, the rockfish, and I believe there were a few others, but there was one jellyfish that I found to be very, very interesting because what this jellyfish would do is that it would go through its life, and then once it reaches adulthood, it could actually take its own cells and revert them back into childhood.
Whoa,
Wow.
that's crazy.
Regeneration.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was cool. That was one of the only things about this that really grabbed me. But yeah, I mean, I really looked into that and I thought it was cool. Um, I don't know. I just imagine though if a person could do that. You know what I mean? That would be so cool to just kind of live your life over and over and over again. Unless your life like really sucks, then but you know, I think it would be cool though to go back in time and then go forward again. And
Yeah.
then once you reach that age that you're like, oh, time to go backward again.
Well, Andy, that is interesting that you brought that up about the jellyfish because I was told by a pretty knowledgeable friend of mine that the blood of a jellyfish has healing properties to it. And if we're able to take things from species like that to use in like medicines or, to make some type of material that can help someone in the medical field, what else could we use with that, species of creature? Could we take their cells and put that into the human body and that regenerates our own cells too? Or is that just not going to work?
Mana potions.
Mana potions.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would personally go through with it. I kind of like the traditional flow of things, but I mean, if it's possible, it's interesting though,
Definitely, definitely. I mean, the thought of a serum that could bring you immortality. I mean, it's very Marvel sounding, but yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, we'd really be jumping into the pool of things of like potions and what is that?
Those
Alchemy.
RPGs to life.
Yeah.
Alchemy.
Right, right.
No, like if you take a potion to make if you take a potion to make yourself live longer, I'm sure there'll be like you can't be out in the sun too long, otherwise your skin's gonna burn, and you can't fix that. So it's like once in a lifetime, you either get it right, you can't really do anything.
Well,
Live longer.
you could fix that if you know a good plastic surgeon.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Oz of the Afterlife.
Andy, you jumped onto the species of things. Was there anything else of these species that stood out to you?
No, not really. That one really was kind of the only one because it was something different from the rest.
Yeah.
The red sea urchin, though, there have been samples of the red sea urchin that have lived on for around 200 years, at least. But nobody really knows the actual lifespan of a red sea urchin. So I couldn't really find much on that particular species because of that. And neither could I on any of the other species as well. They was pretty much the same thing until I came across this one jellyfish event, and I just thought it was really cool. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much as far as I got on that.
I do find it interesting that it seems to be that like sea animals have like some of the longest lifespans on like of any animal on the planet, and just I wonder why.
Yeah.
Interesting. About.
Even sea turtles.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know.
I'm sure others don't know either.
Well,
Yeah,
Thinking, like,
turtles
think about it.
turtles can live over 150 years.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Some, I think, but I know turtles is like the biggest one I know that can live like
Yeah.
a very long time.
Sasquatch.
Right.
That's not a secret.
The Sasquatch,
That's a
Oh, the Loch Ness monster. There you go. Travis.
Loch Ness monster, you know.
Plesiosaur.
How do we know how long the Sasquatches live? I mean, I'm pretty sure we're not seeing the same Sasquatch over and over again.
Oh no, it's the same one, definitely.
It shape shifts.
Yes.
It's shit.
Okay. So we've just been seeing the exact same creature over thousands of years.
Gotcha.
It's not bad.
Okay.
And
Alright.
it's gonna teleport.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's Juice.
Yeah, I can buy that. Sure. I really did not get too far in the research in this. I'm sorry, man. Like I tried to stay awake. The majority of it was like science fiction based, in my opinion. And so I don't really get into the science fiction aspect of things. I'm more of a true to life kind of guy.
That's all right.
So,
Andy,
you know,
Ryan did have a point he'd like to bring up to you.
No, I was just going to talk about, I think, to my opinion, I think the immortality is the person's name itself being spread around. Like, cause like if your name is still being said, you still have immortality. You're still alive, basically.
Like Abraham Lincoln.
Like
or
Lincoln,
Hitler.
like anybody who's like popular, like
Yeah.
Jesus, you can say has immortality. He has like the crosses everywhere. So I mean, he's always
People like
he's
Jesus.
he's always going to have that. But if your name is dead, when nobody mentions it anymore, then technically your immortality is gone because nobody's mentioning you anymore. There's no names out there.
So you see immortality more as a entitlement, more than like the flesh living on forever.
Correct. I think it's more an entitlement to be.
Which is
to
really
be
interesting
immortality.
that Ryan says that, because I do like psychic development classes from time to time, and like the teacher from there would mention that like with reincarnation, if that's something you believe in, is like really you can't be reincarnated until the last person who knew you existed for like basically either dies off or forgets about you. And so it's really interesting that you bring up that point about like immortality and your name being mentioned, because it's like your soul is like literally dying because no one remembers you.
True.
I mean,
right.
you always have a gravestone,
Yeah.
so you always have that. But
Who looks at gravestones?
I mean, is anybody going to visit you? Is anybody going to research you? No.
Well, let's say that you get cremated
Might.
and you want your ashes spread somewhere, so you don't have the gravesite. Your kids pass away, maybe they don't have any kids, so you don't have any grandchildren. So your lineage stops there.
No, because if your parents,
You
like,
just-
let's say if someone continues like talking about you,
Yeah.
like my grandfather passed away years ago,
Mm.
but we still talk about him.
True.
That's
So
But
why would that
but
not be
his
the
children
same?
had
Well,
children.
I meant like your lineage stops. Like you aren't existent. Your parents didn't have kids.
like he
There's
never
nobody.
became a grandpa.
And after they go on, that's it of your family. You know, and if they don't have any friends that are alive anymore, that's it.
Because they
It's
were
like you're a
jerks.
John Doe.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, we have Facebook now and Instagram, so there's like these digital
So now we have
grave
data.
things of us.
Yeah.
So like, and even when you pass away, you can have a legacy owner. You know, somebody can still kind of manage your Facebook for you, and then whatever. So it's kind of like a digital gravesite in a way for people that's passed away. You can still visit them, see pictures of them. So technically, I guess we're all immortal now, thanks to Facebook and Instagram and
Yeah.
other digital
The government.
stuff. The government.
Right on.
The NSA, the CIA.
Yep.
Andy, what's your 50 cents on that?
Well, to be honest, I have actually thought about, you know that thing where you can, like, when you die, you can become a tree?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard about that?
Yes, I want to do that.
Me too.
That's what I want to do, because, you know, my whole thing my whole thing in life has been about helping people.
I will shoot lasers from the screen.
You'll be what?
Sorry, Andy. They're having little mini communication
Sorry.
stores back here.
We got excited about shooting for a
They're
moment.
talking about becoming the tree grade with you, and then Ryan's like, "Ooh, yay, become paper products."
Said no, I can do shoot lasers from its branches.
But my whole thing throughout my life has always been about helping people. And so, in my opinion, to become a tree and actually, spread oxygen, help spread oxygen throughout the world, I'm still helping people even in death. So, for me, it's the perfect thing. So that's what I want to do. But I guess I have to be cremated in order to do that first.
I thought
Really, though.
they have little egg pods that you can go into.
Delightful.
No, like seriously, it's like a fetal position they put you
Yeah.
into, and it's like a egg pod that they bury, and that's what becomes the tree.
There's different ways. Like I've seen
Really?
the one you're talking
Yeah.
about where it's like the egg, and then I've seen the one where like they
They
it's kind of like they
cremate you.
cremate you, and then they like compress you into like this little impression, like a peat pod, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, for me, they're gonna need like a Mork and Mindy sized egg.
So Nate, moving on, jumping back onto the mortality train here, because we left off on trees and giving back, and that's kind of
Well, I kind of want to go back to religion because
Okay.
there was one that kind of stuck out to me, and that was Hinduism. So, like, Hindus believe in an immortal soul, which is reincarnated after death. And
Right.
so, according to Hinduism, people repeat a process of life, death, and rebirth in a cycle called samsara. And
Right.
if you live your life well, their karma, which is where the word karma comes from, improves, and their station in the next life will be higher. So if you live your life poorly, it will be conversely lower. After many lifetimes of perfecting its karma, your soul is freed from the cycle and lives in perpetual bliss. There's no place of eternal torment in Hinduism, although if a soul consistently lives very evil lives, it could work its way down to the very bottom of the cycle. So essentially, it's kind of like they have different layers of heaven and hell.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting.
But they
You know,
also, yeah.
I think the Islamic religion is pretty similar to that, actually. I think they believe in a similar thing.
Yes.
Because I remember, and I hate remembering this because it was, during the time of 9/11, but I remember people talking online about how the Islamic religion believed in karma and dying was no big thing to them because they could come back and their life would be even better. I mean, I don't know much about it, so I can't go into detail. I can't really get into it, but
Yeah.
I do believe they're very similar, yeah.
Okay. Nate, did you find any more highlights?
I know the Taoism religion, death is unavoidable.
So they don't believe in immortality at all.
Well, it says spiritual immortality in this allows the soul to leave the earthly realms of afterlife and go to pure realms in the Taoist cosmology. So they're very like earth, wind, and fire, like elemental
Type of things.
Yeah. So really, the one religion that stuck out to you was Christianity.
Yeah, just the resurrection aspect of it.
Yeah.
I don't think Christianity is really into the whole reincarnation part. I mean, I'm sure there are some that are,
Well,
because
there's
there are
about
many different branches of Christianity.
Yeah, so there's like, how there's different like books of the Bible, but then there's other books that like weren't included in the Bible. Like there's one book of Thomas where like apparently he like went really like it wasn't included in the Bible because it just seemed too like far-fetched to add in, but like in it he mentioned that like because Thomas was one of the disciples, and he mentioned that like Jesus had told them about like, you know, reincarnation and things like that, like, and like I guess they just considered that blasphemous, so they didn't include it in the Bible when they were making it.
Right, I heard about that.
And so I've always wanted to read that book. Just like I've read other outside books. I forget the actual term for it, but like basically books that didn't make it into the Bible per se, for one reason or another. And so I've been wanting to read it because I mean, if he was a disciple, like clearly he wouldn't just be making this up. Or something.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
The other one that I kind of thought interesting too was the Zoroastrianism.
The hardest one.
That's a lot.
Which
Zorro for short.
which this was very the Zorro religion, which they believe on the fourth day after death, the human soul leaves the body and the body remains as an empty shell. So souls would go to either heaven or hell. These concepts of the afterlife in the Zorro religion may have influenced Abrahamic religions. The Persian word for immortal is associated with the month Amardad,
April.
which is meaning deathless in Persian, the Iranian calendar. The most Amardad is celebrated in Persian culture as Asian Persians believe the angel of immortality won over the angel of death in this month. So basically, the story of the fallen angel, the devil, or Satan, who tried overpowering God, and God struck him down.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of goes back to, you know, immortality winning over death.
I see. Okay. So with the fallen angel being the death symbol,
Yeah,
and the top power
it
known
being
as God
immortality.
being the immortal
Yeah.
entity.
So I mean, there's like,
In a way, it's like basically life itself is immortal.
yeah,
But
well,
you
if you
just,
think about it in base of energy in the past, when we talk about energy can't be destroyed or
Yeah.
created. So when something dies, if it doesn't become immortal, then where does it go?
exactly. That does make you wonder. So I mean, it's like the flesh and bone. It's not necessarily our power source. It's what's inside of it. That's what we really are. This is just kind of like our puppet, our shell, if you will.
Which goes into
the other thing we didn't bring up was the Egyptians,
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
which was
they
like
were
a huge
really
thing.
Why don't you tell us about it?
Right. The Egyptians believed in immortality through sacrifice.
Well, there's the god Ankh, which is the immortal god. Ankh is an Egyptian symbol of life that holds connotations of immortality when depicted in the hands of the gods and pharaohs.
It's like a relic. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, like, they would be buried with like their live cats and animals. Like they would actually bury the live animal with them.
I thought they would kill him and then put him in there.
Did
They would mummify him.
You'd be mad because that's
Like, cause they found like mummified cats and stuff.
Wow. They didn't actually put the live animal in there?
But I mean, they'd kill it. They wouldn't like just put it in there and be like, "Guess you die in a few weeks." But yeah, like they would be found with like mummified animals with them.
Well, I know they had the jars too. They would put the major organs in, like preserve them.
They separated. Yes. They thought that in the afterlife that they would the land. I can't remember what they called it, but it was across the Nile.
Yeah,
That they would cross
They
the
would cross
Nile.
something.
denied.
One, like basically how well you were mummified, like
Moses
would
says that.
preserve you.
Well, they believed everything that was buried with you they would be taken with you. So like it's like your moving truck storage unit.
Well, if you think about
until until there's a space available.
I don't know if like basically like the reason like they mummify things is like for immortality because like I don't know if they knew at the time, but like it preserves your DNA really well, and so like you know, let's say aliens come down and like, hey, let's revamp these people. They just have to take the DNA and clone it, and there you go, you are immortal.
Right.
Revived in that sense, I guess.
That's an interesting theory. Yeah, I can see the possibility with it for sure.
There are also some cultures that believe that, you know, once you die and actually become a spirit, you are immortal in that sense as well.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like on a new plane. You don't have a body. You're your true form through energy.
Right.
There's also some religions. I remember watching a documentary on one of these old channels, probably like PBS or something. But it's a southern country. I believe it's a Latin American, and they celebrate the dead bodies of their relatives, and they like
Day of the Dead.
Well, no, like they literally have dead bodies of their relatives, and they change their clothes.
Oh yeah.
And they keep them alive, quote unquote. Yeah.
Or they'll take them out and put another body in there, like that they reuse and reuse.
Redress them.
Yeah, they will redress them. Yeah.
I found that kind of creepy, but at the same time fascinating that people are able to do that and willing to do that, and they believe in that type of thing. It's like wow.
Zombies.
Well, and kind of what there's another thing I thought was interesting about the whole animal immortality was that I found an article from 2017 from the National Institute of Health where they used drugs to extend the healthy lifespan in mice.
And that actually worked?
Yes.
It said identified a novel class of drug that delayed several age-related symptoms in mice, which is fast.
So it basically just slowed the clock down.
And where can I get some of this?
If you have $2 billion, you can go get it at your local pharmacy.
The black market.
So basically, I'm only a few $1 million short.
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much somebody who doesn't deserve it will get it.
What if you eat one of the mice?
Like Spider-Man getting
Drink
bit
its
by
blood. Like the kids have to squeeze the juices out.
So everyone, if you haven't remembered, Ryan is our morbid one of the team.
No, I'm not.
Right. I remember.
A rat and a mouse and drinking its squibs to get them.
Let me put it this way. I remember it's just the first time I'm actually hearing it.
Well, but
can you prolong yourself with the virus?
But there is also everyday things that in the medical field that people use for preventing the aging process, like Botox,
blood transfusion. No, they do that. They do
blood transfusions.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in a way, that is
immortality through Botox.
No, seriously, because people don't want to age, and if you think about it, they're trying to prevent themselves from changing, and then there's also the whole cryonics thing that Kaylee brought up earlier, where you're able to freeze yourself for the low payment of I don't know $500,000 or more. But the other thing I think about is if you get resurrected in 200 years.
What's the point?
What's the point? Because everything would have been changed. So you would have to learn everything over again.
All your loved ones are gone.
Right.
And what's to say that place would be shut down?
Yeah.
That'd be terrible.
And the tanks are just sitting there.
Style on us.
And they don't know how
like in the cases of reincarnation, only very few people actually remember their reincarnations.
I love that one because the Scottish kid from he remember ever since he could start talking, you talk about his life on this remote island of Scotland.
Yes.
It's on YouTube. And so basically there's a remote island, and he always talks about how he had his 3 brothers and sisters and this dog, and it was along the ocean line and in this white house, and they like I watched it for like it was like an hour-long episode, and like the mom like finally does like she does the research forever and finally finds the house that like was him, like was the house he grew up in, and like the kid remembers everything. He can tell like what changed, like what used to be there from before.
Fake.
Come on, little kid, we're gonna go on a little ride, okay?
It's just interesting, like whether it's fake or not, it's just interesting.
We may not come back.
I remember as a kid watching an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, like way back in the day of like Robert Stack, and I remember watching an episode where this little kid remembered being a soldier on a ship that went down during the Battle of Pearl Harbor. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Like they did a hypnosis session on him, and he recounted like action for action everything that happened that day. And they went back into some records of it and found out that everything he said was 100% factual. And this kid was like 5 years old.
Yeah, they're like, there's no way they would know that.
Exactly. I mean, what 5-year-old is gonna research Pearl Harbor or even be able to understand it at that age? So, yeah, I mean, everything that he had said was 100% factual. And I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, because like even if it's the parent trying to tell their kid to make up a story to get their 15 minutes of fame, at the age of 5, that's a lot of information to retain, and that's a lot of very complicated information for a 5-year-old. So
exactly.
And they repeat it correctly too.
Exactly. Yeah, being recorded or something. So I've always wondered that too. Like, how are these little children able to talk about this stuff if they don't know anything about it, or if
spirits?
Hey.
Right.
Like the few things that like I've read about reincarnation is like the reason why like children like will believe, like will remember these things as opposed to like adults, or like it'll fade once they get to adulthood, is like because there's like basically like being born, like you're still kind of fresh. So like sometimes like if you had a traumatic life seep into your like current life, since it's like it's the same soul and stuff, you guys are like still, it's still you're just in a different life form, and so it's like you getting adjusted to your new life. And so for some kids, like they don't, it goes away after a while. For some kids, it's just more vivid than others, and it's probably because they probably had a traumatic life thing, like the Pearl Harbor incident.
Makes sense.
Right. And a lot of people, they just don't remember it.
Or like they learn to suppress it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But when it comes down to it, what do you guys think though with reincarnation and immortality? Do you feel like they're both the same thing, or like a brother and sister parallel thing?
I think it's more of a parallel, to be honest with you.
How so, Andy?
Boy, you had to hit me with that one, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Well,
this will be our final showdown for tonight's podcast episode. What is the difference between immortality and reincarnation, if any?
I don't really know if it could really count as immortality, because, like, for one, you have to die in order to get there.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier. So I don't know if it really counts as immortality. It may count more along the lines of the immortal soul, but definitely not the immortal body. In terms of the immortal body, that's the part that I think may be more science fiction-y rather than truth. But yeah, I think it falls along the lines of the immortal soul, most definitely.
Okay. Yeah, nice breakdown, Andy. I like that. What about you, Kaylee? How do you feel with reincarnation and immortality? Do you kind of feel like they coexist as the same thing, or do you feel like they're two separate type of things?
I agree with him about the soul thing. Like immortality, I've always seen it as like the soul and the same body together.
Okay.
So like,
Right.
once the soul leaves that vessel, that's not considered immortality, because the goal of immortality is to keep your current self together.
Yeah, not to change.
Right. The whole point of immortality is to live forever. So yeah, I agree with that.
I think Ryan has a really good highlight, Andy. Here we go.
No, actually, I don't.
Oh, get him out of here.
No, reincarnation is technically when your old self is going to be reincarnated to something else. Whereas if you are immortality, you're the same person. It doesn't change.
Okay.
So it's kind of it's a little bit different.
So you feel like if death is involved at all, that's not immortality. Immortality, you have to stay alive the entire time, right?
No, because if you die, I'm just saying, immortality is if to me immortality is that if as long as your name's being mentioned, you're still alive. You're still, but with reincarnation is if you die, you're going to put your soul or something into something else instead.
Okay.
You're using somebody else's to be reincarnated.
All right. So you feel like immortality doesn't have to have anything to do with physically being alive?
No.
It's only reincarnation where you die and you can become something else. Correct. In a weird way, I guess that is an immortality. If it's your same spiritual being jumping into something new, it's different, but your inner self is still the same. But I see what you're saying. That's interesting. I like that way of thinking. What about you, Nate? Do you have any last tidbits on, with immortality? And
I don't really have a final verdict on that.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much surrounding it.
Yeah.
That I've not really thought about it.
Well, what do you think now? After all this conversation.
I'm not religious, so I don't really know. I don't know what. There's so many different things out there that.
Well, I'm right there with you, Nate, because I'm more on like the spiritual side of things rather than religious. So I'm with you on that. I feel that. It's hard to really come up with thoughts on certain subjects when you're not religious. So yeah, I feel what you're saying. I can't really describe it, but I feel what you're saying.
Like, I don't have a set, like, this is what's going to happen, and I think this, and this, because I personally don't know.
Hey,
Nobody knows.
that is perfect.
That's what we're trying to do as a paranormal team. We're trying to find the answer.
Jesus knows.
Now you're just trying to find ghosts.
Trying to find ghosts?
Yeah.
That's only in satanic locations.
Aww.
Sorry, Caitlin.
Goats. Say ghosts?
No, I said goat. Yeah, I said ghost, not goat.
Oh.
Goof.
I thought you said
Sorry.
goats.
No.
I'm like, that's
I thought you
scary.
said goats too.
I won't be there.
All right, so personally for me, reincarnation, I'm kind of on the same bandwagon with Ryan. I feel like you have to pass away. Your current physical shell has to die, but your spiritual being stays the same, and it goes into a new shell. Now, whether or not that new shell looks like your old shell to almost a 99.9% degree, I don't know. Whether or not you turn into a fish or a tree or a dog, that's another thing. But as for immortality, I feel like it's a completely different aspect of life as well. I feel like you have to stay alive the entire time. Same shell, same spiritual being. I don't so much feel like it's the entitlement thing, but I do see what Ryan's getting at with that. I do. That's actually really, really clever, and it makes sense. But
Thank you.
I feel like immortality can also be in the physical flesh. I feel like it can be more of a physical thing too. But whether or not it's real, don't know. Haven't been there. I haven't had any evidence for that yet. But hopefully we won't come across any like zombies or, not like the gory zombies, but zombies from voodoo or a vampire.
I will say that before our discussion tonight on immortality, I did view this as more of a science fiction topic than anything.
Yeah.
But I think my views on that are starting to change a little bit.
Awesome, Andy.
So yeah, so this topic did actually do some good for me tonight.
Getting out of your comfort zone.
Open those doors.
Yes,
Training, that's what we call it.
opening my mind a bit.
And that's what we like to do with these podcasts too, you know, Andy, with our listeners, with our guests, even with ourselves. You know, we're not going to have all the facts, all the answers, but it's nice to be able to take these topics, break them down to what we believe, what we do know, what others have experienced, and see if we can, you know, learn something new on it, something that we may never even thought was possible.
Right.
So I'm glad that worked out for you like that, for sure.
Yeah, me too. I definitely learned a lot tonight.
Andy, do you have any, you know, before we end this podcast episode tonight, do you have any last words that you like to get out on the topic, or?
Not on my end, no. I think that's about it.
Okay, cool. What about you, Kaylee, Ryan, Nate?
No.
Any last
That was
tidbits
a
on
good
Immortality?
discussion.
You guys feel like this pretty good?
I
Yes.
am good.
Yeah, I think it went pretty smooth tonight, actually.
I think so too. I like it, especially, you know, starting it up and not really feeling too comfortable with this topic, because I don't think it's something we've really dove into all that, you know, deeply.
Right.
Really can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh God, especially me. I can't even.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, when it's such a I don't know how to even say it, you know, such a broad or, you know, vast topic or something you've just never really considered talking about. It's like, how do I even go about doing it? But we did it.
Right. I
No
mean,
problem.
I've been studying the paranormal for 30 years, and never once have I thought about looking into immortality.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, like I said, I always thought it was more of a science fiction thing, because it's always in like science fiction movies and things like that. And so I thought, well, you know, I hear about ghosts all the time, but I never once hear about, you know, hey, I live forever. You know, it to me, it just was not a real subject.
Yeah.
So I kind of laughed about it when Nate brought it up, but I mean, there are some parts of it that I guess do kind of go into the paranormal aspect.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I gave it my best. But I'm going to start, you know, looking into it a bit more, because I'm a little bit more interested now after tonight.
Well, that's good. That's what we aim for.
Exactly. Sure is, Kayla.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that did turn out so well too, Andy. And if you do
Yeah.
need more pieces of info on this topic, you gotta let us know, and maybe we can do a part 2.
Right, yeah.
Andy, thank you for coming on, you know, for this podcast with us. I hope you had a good time, Andy.
Oh, absolutely. I got to tell you, I totally dig the podcast thing. You know, I mean, it's definitely right up my alley. So I have a lot of fun when we do this.
Awesome, man. Well, you know, we'll be bringing you back on, Andy.
I look forward to future shows and future investigations.
Well, for all of our listeners out there, as you guys know, as always, you can check us out, contact us, possibly even get on the podcast with us. PILT Paranormal, go to Google, just type that in. You'll be able to find all of our outlets there, Instagram, Facebook, our official website, piltparanormal.com. And as for our podcast, you can check us out at Red Circle, which is our base homepage for our podcast. And from there, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. So,
Cool.
you know, and for whatever podcast server you use, like I said, just type in PILT Paranormal or, you know, the Para Connection Podcast, and we should pop up if we're on there. And we're on all major podcast servers out there, so it's pretty cool. So, Andy, once again, thank you for coming on to the podcast. And guys, Kaylee, Nate, Ryan, thank you for being here. I had a good time getting this podcast rolling with you again.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right,
Thanks for
guys.
being on.
And to our listeners, thank you for listening, and we hope to get you back on to the next podcast episode and go on from there. Until that time, stay frosty and stay tuned.